So we're going to Penn State Saturday for Ohio State versus Penn State, and there's a lot of nervousness. Understandably so, it's a big game. Man, it's got Big Ten championship implications and the playoff deal, but this is just a big, some call it a rivalry game, some get bent out of shape when you call it a rivalry game, but it's a big game in the Big Ten. And big game environment, and I can't wait, and I've been to this game a couple of times and we'll be there again. This stuff is not for the faint of heart. This stuff is not fair. And by that, I mean someone's going to face a mountain of criticism when they lose this game. So earlier this week, someone asked, well, who has more pressure on them? Which is sometimes a topic I like to bat down. Like, I look at questions like that, and I think there are so many more things to talk about on the field that have nothing to do with this abstract nonsense. But in this case, I think it applies. And if it's low-hanging fruit, then it's low-hanging fruit. But how could you not have watched college football recently and understand what's on the line for the loser of this game? It's a very morose way to go about approaching a game. But I said earlier this week, when someone told me all the pressure's on James Franklin, I said, you're crazy. All the pressure's on Ryan Day. And they disagreed with me because they said, well, Penn State's at home and they've got a perfect season so far, and if they lose, then a lot of their preseason goals could be out the window. Well, you're not wrong, but that's not what you asked me. You asked me who faces more pressure. It's Ryan Day by a mile, by a country mile, as Meemaw would say. But if you don't believe me, let's walk through this. What if James Franklin loses? Competitive game. So let's just say our hypothetical here is 27-24 either way, something like that. All right, no blowout. That's a whole different conversation. Competitive game, Penn State loses. What happens? Here's what happens. Penn State fans are mad. They're upset that they got another shot, maybe the best shot they've had at the dominant brand in the Big Ten, if not the best team this year in Ohio State, and they didn't get the job done. People will have a few news cycles where they question whether James Franklin will ever win the big one. They will talk about how there are facets of the program that don't measure up to that of Ohio State. Maybe there's not full commitment here. Maybe there's not full buy-in there. Unavoidable. That will all happen. But that's all that will happen. You understand that, right? That's what will happen, because at the end of the day, if Penn State fails to beat Ohio State, all that will have happened is what's already been happening. Now, that doesn't make a Penn State fan happy. If James Franklin's watching the show, he listens to that and he just hits mute. He just throws his laptop against the wall. He doesn't even want to consider that they could lose a game. That's not an option for them. I understand all that, but I'm not them. I'm not him. I'm not amongst the Penn State booster class. I'm not a Penn State alum. So I'm just looking at it through the objective lens of a kid who grew up in West Central Georgia. That's the way it would feel to me. Now, do me a favor. Untie the laces, take the shoe off, put it on the other foot. What if Ohio State and Ryan Day lose? It is Armageddon. It is end of the line, if not end of the outright world of Ryan Day / Ohio State for many Buckeye fans. Understand where we would be. We would be in unprecedented territory there. We've seen Ohio State fail to win a national title. Of course we have. It's really hard to win those things. But even when they've missed recently, they've been right there, and then it's Michigan. That's the hurdle they can't get over. Well, Michigan's not that high a hurdle to clear this year. Again, all due respect to the Wolverines, all due respect to that rivalry. Ohio State would be like a 3-touchdown favorite in that game if they played it today, and probably will be by the time they do play it, and they get them at home this year. So I'm looking at it, if I am an Ohio State fan, or even if I'm not, and I'm saying, the Michigan hurdle's never been lower recently. You got that in the bag, but you already got one loss on the road at Oregon. If you lose this game with a team that was custom built to win a title, I was up there in spring. I sat down with Ryan Day for a long time. There were no apologies made about the idea that we are all in for 2024. They were aggressive in the portal. They didn't go and do the Florida State thing where they totally built the team out of the portal. In fact, I would argue the nucleus of the team's been built the right way. The nucleus of the team was built through high school recruiting. A lot of the guys that returned, in fact, all the guys who returned, were built homegrown. Then you add in a Quinshon Judkins and you add in a Caleb Downs. That's the way you should use the portal. Everything about the way Ohio State put this team together is the way that sustainable winners will put their teams together. So if they lose, having done all that, if they lose the first week of November for the second time, and they no longer control their Big Ten destiny, and you've now, believe me, you will have this, you've now got people questioning whether their resume is even good enough to make the playoff. And by the way, even if their resume is good enough, you'd be singing the same tune about them as folks have been about Bama recently. What are we even talking about playoff here? They still got games to go. If Ohio State has already lost 2 times, they're not immune from losing a 3rd time. It's not some gimme that they're going to beat Indiana. I had FanDuel give us the number today. Ohio State's favored by 12.5 at home right now against Indiana. So don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And then they have the Michigan game. And again, if Ohio State's been vulnerable enough to lose twice in this scenario, who says Michigan couldn't beat them? Like, who says Michigan couldn't victimize that offensive line, no matter where they play? It would be the tipping point that a lot of people who have held out from criticizing Ryan Day would no longer hold out after. I wouldn't be in that boat, but I've gone over this before with you. It takes a lot. I'm the last one to ever bail on coaches usually, unless it's scandal or something like that. I'm the last one to bail. I'd like to think I have a pretty good head on my shoulders about this stuff, but I also, in the very next breath, always tell you, I'm not the one who pays for the season tickets. I'm not the one who pays my dues every year. I'm not the one who eats, sleeps, and breathes that specific team. And I give everything emotionally and financially they ask me to, and I'm not getting the return on my investment. That's not me. If that were me, maybe I'd have the lack of patience that you guys do. But, if Penn State does win this, I tweeted out earlier, what did I tweet? I wanted to put it out there about an hour before the show so that folks could just marinate on it. I said, you never know when the sun may rise on the most important day of your career. What if Saturday morning the sun is rising on the most important day of James Franklin's career? Unbeknownst to us, maybe even unbeknownst to he and his staff. But there could be a tipping point moment. We've waited for it for a long time with Penn State. What if beating Ohio State is no fluke? What if they just outplay them? They beat them 27-17, 31-13, really emphatically. And they go on a run. And it culminates with playing for the Big Ten championship. And whether they win it or not, they're in the playoff at that point. And maybe Drew Aller's elevated his game, and that offense has found its rhythm, and that running game's clicking down the stretch in November. Defense gets healthy, and it is what Penn State defense has been for a while. And then they reap the recruiting benefit, and they become a whole lot more desirable, a portal destination. And Penn State goes on a little run here that they haven't gone on to this point. They are the hunted rather than the perennial hunter. Understand, all those dominoes could start with Saturdays being knocked over. That's why these games are so big. You never know when the sun rises on the biggest day of your career. However, on the worst days of your career, you usually know when the sun just set on it. And I really think that could be the case for Ryan Day. I don't like dressing games up like this because in the grand scheme of things, it's one game. But I cannot deny the external ramifications that exist around this one. It's unique in the way it's set up because of the fact that they lost. They had the audacity to lose by 1 point to the #1 team in the country on the road. And so because you had the audacity to do that, in reality, Ohio State could be the 9th best team in the country this year and go 10-2. Because the 9th best team in the country reasonably should go 10-2 against their schedule because they play 2 top 10 teams on the road. No one wants to hear that. And once people's minds get made up on this, they're made up.